To Mr. Griffith from Virginia. Mr. Griffith, you're recognized to make whatever comments on any amendment you care to address.
Well, I could address a lot, but I'm here today to talk about 119, which is my amendment. I'm just appreciative that you all are taking the time to hear us out. Now, this amendment is part of my efforts over the years to try to bring parity in between renewables and fossil fuels. And a lot of people say, well, why would you want to do that? We're not going to be using coal anymore. That's just not true. We have abundant coal resources in our country. We have metallurgical coal and thermal coal. Thermal coal clearly is on the downslide, but not one that we are ready to get rid of as we move to more renewables. And how do we know that? Well, an article appeared within the last few days. One came out this summer, and then one came out October 1st. And I would submit these for the record. Electric vehicle battery factory breathes new life into coal plant, and Panasonic plant will require so much power. Evergy will seek rate hike in Kansas. Now, here's the situation.
Without objection.
And I'll pass that down. Y'all can pass that down to the folks. And here's what happened. Panasonic is going to build a huge EV battery plant in Kansas. And to do so, they're going to need so much power that the power company there has extended the life of a coal-fired power plant that they had originally scheduled to eliminate, and they're going to expand it. Now, eventually, they're going to move to natural gas for one of the units, but Unit 4 is going to be expanded, and it's going to burn coal at least for 4 or 5 more years than originally anticipated, because we can't move to the renewables without the baseload power to do it. And I would submit to this committee that that's not just in putting the EV batteries in, but as we move to have more and more cars that are electric vehicles, and as the public wants that in some places, and that's fine, that's part of us moving forward, we're going to need to continue to use coal. And so I would submit that as a nation, we need to continue to do a huge amount of research, and that's why I've always been for parity. And this amendment cuts some money from renewables, adds it to fossil, and then sends the remainder into not being spent, or into the reduction of spending account, whichever way y'all want to do it. I thought it was going to have that language in here, but I don't see it. That being said, it's not just the United States. This is something that my colleagues often forget. There's roughly 300 million people in India who do not have a on-call electric power source. 300 million people, that's almost as much as the population of the United States. If you're the leadership of India, are you going to say we're not going to use our coal, we're not going to use our abilities to provide that power to our people while the rest of the world is able to do so? I don't think so. And I don't know how we sit back in judgment of them when they want what we have, and the way to get it for them may very well be to burn coal. Sub-Saharan Africa, a lot of the nations there, they use a lot of solar in some of the countries, and water, but they also use a lot of coal, a lot of times built by plants that have been engineered with old technology from China. And then, of course, there's China. And China's continuing to build plants. If we invest the money in energy, in research on energy for fossil fuels, we can solve these problems for the world. We've already seen that in one experiment at Virginia Tech resulted in some technology that was then licensed to Indian steel manufacturers to make their own coal, which is not as good as ours, a little bit higher quality so they can burn it with a lower carbon footprint. That's the goal long term. We help our country, yes. We also export the technologies so that we can then have a cleaner world. And if you think, well, the rest of the world isn't going to affect the United States of America, let me disabuse you of that thought. Mr. Chairman, these studies are a little bit old now, but they're ones that I've always banked on because they're accurate. NASA did a study of how long it takes for air to move from the middle of the Gobi Desert to the Chesapeake Bay of Virginia. It's 10 days. So when they're burning coal and they're not using the technologies we already have or the technologies we hope to discover by putting more money into research, that affects us. It affects our air. It affects the air in my district, which is a long, long way from China. Further, an old study, and the numbers may be a little off, but I think there's probably still pretty dramatic, a majority of the mercury in California came from Asia. comes across the ocean. So we have an obligation, if we're going to spend this kind of money on research, we have an obligation to spend it not just on renewables, ladies and gentlemen, but we have an obligation to spend it on fossil fuels so that we can make the rest of the world safer to breathe air and make it safer for us to breathe air. And if we stick our heads in the sand and we continue to think that if we just do it here in the United States, it's going to solve all the problems, then we're mistaken. And we are adopting a self-centered approach which is not healthy for the world or healthy for us. That being said, I can go on about research projects in my district and other facilities where they've got flatbed filter processes that can take any substance you want out of any smokestack or any facility that's currently using this technology in chicken plants to pull ammonia out. And the technology can be used, originally was developed to be used for coal-fired power plants. So there's a lot of technology that's floating around out there that we are missing the boat on because we're not going to spend the money to do the research to help the world deal with fossil fuels going forward. And with that, I yield back.